Good evening, Mr. Chair, members. Jason Atkins Toff.
Here.
And on that note, Mr. Chair, when you vote for or second or, make a motion or second a motion, please raise your hand so that I know and Tricia knows who's doing it.
I talk with my hands anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem.
So Member Atkins Toff present, Member Blunt,
Here.
Member Bush, absent. Member Dixon.
Present.
Member Fox.
Present.
Member Grundy Gomez.
Here.
Member Idy. Member Merritt. Member Mitchell.
Present.
Member Nielsen.
Here.
Member Palmer. Member Pollitt.
Present.
Member C. Wright, absent. Member Turner Evans. Mr. Chair, we have 9 members present. We have quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Remember to raise your hand. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have an agenda. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second?
I move.
Second. Who
All
was that?
right, any discussion on the minutes?
Who second?
Stay up, keep up here, okay? All right, we have a motion to second, no discussion. All in favor? Remember to raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And we have approved minutes. I don't have a chair's report. Do we have a director's report?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Sarah Vidal. Just a few things to mention. The first is that our office space at GTEC.
Uh-oh. Technical problem. Got a remix.
All right, let me try this again. Our office space at GTEC has been completed. We will bring some photos to you shortly at one of the next meetings, but if any of you would like a tour, please let us know and we can arrange that. We're getting ready to take the commissioners through Heartwood tomorrow through the model home and then also hopefully through our office. So we're excited about that. I just wanted to remind everyone about the joint city-county meeting and the date for that. Trisha, you might have to remind me because here it says March 29th, but I don't think that's
April 7th.
correct. It was April
7th.
No, it's March 29th is the joint city county and
Okay.
city commission is April 1st.
Okay, thank you. We've had so many back-to-back meetings. That's hard to keep track. So we'll look forward to
No,
that.
I've got the April 7th is the joint meeting.
Okay, so there's 2 different meetings. This is worth clarifying. So I'm looking at your face, Trisha, to make sure I'm correct, but March 29th is joint county city commission, correct? And so this goes back to our agreement between the city and the county that once a year we will report our reinvestment activities in a more formal way in this joint meeting. So that's what that meeting is on March 29th.
I don't
And
have it. Are we supposed to have that on our calendar? Because I don't have it. I don't know
You
about
are not
anybody else.
So you're not required to attend, but we can have Trisha send that meeting invite to you all if you're interested in attending for sure.
Point of information. Yep. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Sarah, just to get clarity, if I'm understanding, there's this joint city-county commission meeting, correct?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
we can attend if we'd like to. But our meeting that's joint between the GCRAB and the city is April the 7th, is that correct?
Correct.
In these chambers?
Yes, however, the commission will have the chambers and our board will be remote. So my understanding is that the commission will be able to make recommendations or vote on recommendations, but the board will not. So I believe that, since you're all remote, what we'll be hoping is that we'll get some robust conversation, and so that way the commission will be involved, in the conversation. But they'll be able to make actual motions and approve them.
So to clarify, this body does not need to be here that night. We will Zoom in.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. And Trisha, like she normally does with the agenda, I think it's 1 week prior, we'll send a reminder, at that time and further instructions for the meeting.
I'll include the Zoom information in the Outlook invite that goes out the week before.
Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. And then just a quick update on the business improvement grant. We have the first project approved and work will begin soon. And that is on South Main, the climbing gym. So we're excited to have that first application approved and hope to see some positive changes on that property on South Main. So with that, that's all I have for you all tonight, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for our directors? I don't see any. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there a staff report?
I do not have a staff report this evening.
All right, excellent. We'll move on to our business discussion items. The first item is the Community Partnership Grant Program, Fifth Avenue Arts Festival. Do we know who's presenting?
We were expecting someone from the Cultural Arts Coalition to be here. So there are 2 attendees. If one of you are the representative, could you please raise your hand? The name I was looking for is not on here. So it doesn't appear they're here.
We were hoping to have a presentation from someone.
Oh, okay.
Trisha, point of information.
Trisha,
Yes,
point of information. So last year, the same group came for funding last year, and they're coming back as this.
that's correct. They were approved for funding last year, but then COVID hit and the festival was canceled. So they were never paid what they were approved. And they had requested funding this year, and we are working on formalizing the community partnership program. But since it's COVID and there aren't a lot of events happening, this was not a priority, and we were planning on working with other departments to put together a program that would complement what the city already offers, like through other departments.
My question was going to be this though, and this may be for Sarah or for Deborah. Through Parks, Cultural Affairs, and Recreation and Cultural Affairs, have they gone through any community development block grant funding at all? Does anyone know? That's probably a question for Deborah.
I apologize, I don't have that information. I think we have Deborah and the city manager on the line, so maybe one of them could give some insight into your question.
Ms. Bowie, do you know if anyone from the organization has reached out for CDBG funding community development block grant funding, which is what a lot of organizations do for this, something like this.
She must not be on.
So I'll jump in. I'm not sure if they have or not, but just so the advisory board is aware, there is a limitation that only 15% of the annual CDBG allotment can go to public service agencies.
That is a good point.
So we usually have requests that exceed that 15%.
That's a good point. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Member Nelson. Warren, did you have your hand up? Do you want to say something?
Yes. It's been some years since I worked with the festival, but I did so intensely a few years back. And the Community Partnership Grant Program is new. This relationship is not new. The city has participated in sponsorship with this festival for at least the last 15 years consecutively, and sort of spotty before that. So I'm sure there's some mitigating circumstance that Ms. Jai or her rep didn't make it, but this festival is the largest event in the Gainesville area Black community annually going on. I think this is going to be number 40. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we should be involved with this. In fact, I'm sort of disappointed that they didn't ask for the funds left on the table last year as well as this 2000. In fact, if no one else makes a motion soon, I may make a motion to that. Thank you.
Push your light so I can see you. Go ahead. Member Fox.
Discussion items for today, that they are requesting $2,000 for this year, and I do know that they're having an event this year. I don't know if it's virtually or in person, but on the third paragraph, they're requesting $2,000 for virtually, okay, for the virtual festival this year. So if no more discussion, I'm gonna move that.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
To the point of Member Blount, while it's only $2,000, I think when we had the discussion with them last year, there was several inferences that a lot of us asked them, because we were talking about participation and what they're going to do to market it better, because that has also been, we're seeing declining de minimis attendance when it was there prior to COVID. That said, I do agree with how are they going to market differently. I think the representative from Ms. Job was going to talk about how they want to present it. I do agree with Member Fox that we should give them the $2,000. That said, I still would like to see on a plan from them on how they're going to market better, what they're going to do to increase attendance. Because while it's just there, the last few years there have been a de minimis returns when it came to attendance and participation. The facts and the numbers are the numbers. That said, you are right, it is a figure and staplehead, and therefore, Mr. Chair, I would move that we give them the $2,000 they're requesting for their event.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. Member Fox seconds. Remember to put your hand up. Is there discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to amend my motion that we also have some accountability where they can come back to us and report to us on measures and what they've done to improve. So we're just giving them money, but what have they done to improve? So we have some way to account for that. The word escapes me, Mr. Chair, so if one of you all have the words, I'm in a word mood today, but basically where we have accountability and measure the results from what we're, return on investment for these funds.
So
I would like to amend my motion.
we have an amended motion for approval to come back and present a business plan for how this money would be spent. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
I have a question.
Does the seconder want to change the second?
I have a question. I think it's planned for April, so I don't know if we'll have a meeting.
This paper?
Mm-hmm.
This paper explains a little bit more. It says it's April 24th this year.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we had a second. Does the second want to change your second?
Second, Armando's motion.
So his amended motion was to approve the $2,000 and have them come back and submit a business plan for how the money was going to be spent.
No, afterwards. The reason why is to show accountability and measurement, so we can see results, return on investment.
So you want a report after the event?
Correct.
All right,
Okay.
so we'll clear that up.
Correct.
So approve the $2,000 expenditure and request that they come back with a report after the event showing how the event went and how the money was spent.
Okay, thank you.
So you second that motion? I second. All right. Any discussion? Mr. Bond?
I want to offer a friendly amendment. I like the idea of the report back after the event, but I'd like to see that report back tell us about, in fact, I think of it as bragging about, because they've got a lot to tell, about the overall programs of CAC. Because I happen to know that last year, when the onset and shock of COVID canceled the festival altogether, CAC to continue their other programs and continued connection with students, which is their main thrust year round. So several programs they kept going, and actually put more resources into providing connectivity and devices for kids to stay connected with that stuff, at a distance as well. So, and that's why I had the notion of them, that they should still get what was left on the table last year, because I know they invested more in what they switched to instead of last year when COVID fell on us all.
Wow.
So, what I'm asking is, offering a friendly amendment that the report back after the event tell us about the whole array of CAC's programs.
Well, here's what I'll offer to your friendly amendment in response to that, is the CAC also received some nice dollars from a private developer for a development going up near and around there, so you might want to check that out.
Well, that should be told about, that should be told too.
So we have a motion and a second, and does the motioner want to amend their motion?
No.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Remember to raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
However, Member Blunt, but if you wanted to make an amendment or make a motion to your point, you might find a second.
That would show up under board. But we were in the middle of a motion and a second at the point. You were asking the original motioner to amend his motion.
But I'm saying you can make a prevailing motion, you can make another motion behind that, even though not one. That doesn't preclude you from doing it.
All right, we'll move on to the next item. Aquin Jones Context Area Improvements. Do we have a presenter?
We do, Mr. Chair.
Good evening. Floor is yours.
Okay, let me share my screen and make sure that everyone can see that properly.
We do.
Okay. All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Pete McNeese. I'm a project manager for the city of Gainesville. I work for Betsy Waite at Wild Spaces and Public Places. I'm here to show you some of the exterior improvements we recently completed at the Aquin Jones Museum. We embarked on this project to improve accessibility to the museum and to create an inviting outdoor event space. Because we transitioned to an impervious concrete parking area, we had to install a stormwater management system to collect the water that previously percolated into the ground through the gravel. We also created a pavered courtyard with a brick seating wall in the backyard and built a shed to store event tables and chairs. About a third of the project's $300,000 price tag was contributed by the GCRA. We negotiated a construction contract with a small minority-owned and operated business that is trying to establish a permanent presence here in Gainesville, and to graduate from acting as a subcontractor on projects to managing jobs on their own as a general contractor. We helped One Day Came obtain the necessary license from the state of Florida and the permits from the Department of Sustainable Development and Public Works. We were finally ready to start work last summer. Construction officially starts when the first piece of equipment is delivered to the job site. And I'm not sure why the bike racks were such a high priority, but One Day Came made it their first order of business. Osteen Brothers and Delzato Products are both local companies that are staples at most Gainesville construction projects. They are also usually the first to arrive, since underground utilities and site work are essential before starting any vertical construction. Here, we've excavated the parking area to install a rain tank system, which will collect and store stormwater on site. This allows the water to percolate back into the ground instead of immediately flowing into the city's stormwater system, which can be overwhelmed during large rain events. And a discerning eye will notice that I created balance in this slide by including a picture of two people working diligently and one of two people hardly working, which is very typical on construction projects. Once the rain tanks were installed and wrapped in geotextile fabric, we backfilled the area and placed a 6-inch thick concrete slab to create a new, fully ADA accessible parking area. It was important for cultural affairs to have more on-site storage to facilitate future events at the museum, so we included an 8-foot by 14-foot shed. This shed was a bit of a challenge as it had to be redesigned on the fly during construction to maintain separation between the new and the existing roof lines. We also installed an automatic dehumidifier to keep items stored inside from mildewing in the summer. Once the footers were placed and the electrical conduits routed to the area, we were able to start laying brick to form the perimeter seating wall. This wall was pre-wired for built-in accent lights and electrical receptacles to create a more inviting and functional space. This is what the backyard of the museum looked like before we started work on the courtyard. The first order of business was installing concrete ribbon curbs for added visual appeal and to hold the pavers tightly in place post-construction. We also added a soldier course of darker pavers along the perimeter to accentuate the courtyard. You can see those there. Well, I've discovered a big difference making this presentation between progress photos that I've taken during construction to document the details of a contractor's progress and the photos taken by our Wild Spaces and Public Places marketing expert. The next few images were the ones shared with our community neighbors to celebrate the project's completion. This one obviously is of the completed shed. Here's the finished courtyard with the decorative border pavers in place. The courtyard, by the way, looks even more attractive and inviting at night when the wall lights wash the face of the brick on the seating wall with a soft glow. We also built a decorative screen wall to hide some of the mechanical equipment from the casual observer and to provide a couple of hidden electrical receptacles for the maintenance personnel. I included this picture because it's one of the very few construction photos you'll ever see in portrait mode. And our finished seating wall is shown here with the concrete cap installed. The courtyard itself is also quite shaded, which will hopefully make it a favorable venue for daytime events as well. And I hesitated adding this picture because if you look closely, you'll notice the existing paint is starting to peel off the building. But Cultural Affairs has already started repainting so that the A. Quinn Jones Museum will soon be restored to her original grandeur and will serve as a great starting point for the Heritage Trail. Okay, that's the quick tour of our project. Available for questions if I've inadvertently left out something important or confused everyone with construction terminology.
Member Blount.
Thank you. I noticed we're still saying A. Quinn Jones Museum. I want to find out if there's any intention to continue to look in any way like a museum. When the building was opened, the amount amount budgeted for the building would have been appropriate to a very small neighborhood rec center. The amount paid to the founding director was what you'd probably pay a rec aide. And the only reason it resembled a museum was through the sweat equity of that founding director, Miss Desmond Walker. So also I did some programming in that building. And she found a lot of people who, like me, would give these services at no cost. I did a series on Black History, a lecture series on Black History there. But what we were all noticing was that the inside of the building was showing obvious defects, places where water was coming in and causing damage. And here and there, a weak place in the floor. It was a job cosmetically well done, but not quite all the way there in true literal structural terms. So I want to, and this speaker noted the peeling paint on the outside. You may have also noticed mildew on the steps. So I want to find out, one, is the city going to make this structure really give it complete integrity, seal it up good, and will it be run as an actual museum, and will it be appropriately budgeted if so? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if that question was for me. It's probably beyond the scope of my involvement in the project, as I just managed this one construction job.
Yeah, it sounded like it was more for city staff. Is that who you're directing this to?
Yeah,
The manager.
Could one of the city managers, assistant managers, take a shot at answering that? I don't think we have the participation at the moment.
Yeah, so this is Lee Feldman. I think those are all valid questions, but candidly, I don't have the answer on that tonight. So we'll be happy to get back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Member
Chair.
Brandy Gomez?
I actually want to follow up to Member Blount's point. I remember when the director took over this project, and preserving especially neighborhood character and protecting heritage, especially from A. Quinn Jones, is extremely important, especially in Black spaces and with the heritage that is. We're also talking about this. This would be also something similar to a synergy project, Mr. Chair, for the Black Heritage Trail, which is also being proposed. And I think to Member Blount's point, and Pete, first of all, congratulations. Thank you for the hard work you did. My question to you, Pete, directly with this building, and I'll get back to the other point in a second. You talked about building an impervious surface. I guess for me, why was it more just for ADA? Because to me, if we're talking about putting native vegetation like Aztec grass, etc., for landscaping, and having a permeable surface for the groundwater to be caught and not going elsewhere? Wouldn't that make better sense ecologically than an impervious surface, or somewhere where we could have a semi-permeable surface to capture the rainwater? That was my question to you, and then I have some follow-ups for the manager.
Okay. I mean, it's a valid question. I think one of the priorities for the Wild Spaces Public Places program is to make our parks and our cultural facilities in the city of Gainesville more accessible to people who have mobility impairments or are actually in a wheelchair or have difficulty walking on a surface that's as treacherous as gravel. So this project, creating an ADA compliant surface in the parking lot, was high on the list of our priorities.
Thank you. Okay, and I guess, Mr. Manager, is there any way we could find an answer from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs about how we can get some dollars to, invested from Wild Spaces Public Places or other funds to look at evolving this more into the heritage that is supposed to be protected with a project like this? Because this museum is historically significant to this community, and it is extremely important. Is there a way for somebody to get back to us on that?
Yeah, we certainly can come back and show you the Wild Spaces plan. Everything else is going to be competing for general fund dollars. We do that through.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions or comments on the Aquin Jones context area improvements? Okay, there's no action required. It was to hear an update. We'll go to our next item. The GCRA roadmap prioritization. Do we know who's presenting? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. It's amazing how many times we still do that, even though we know. So thanks for your patience. So tonight, we're bringing this item forward. Next month, we will be having a budget presentation at the joint meeting because of the way the budget calendar lines up. That will be when we need to take it forward for review, and that's for fiscal years 22 and 23. So in preparation for that, on tonight's agenda, we're going to just kind of briefly talk about the timeline of how we got to where we are and the budget timeline looking forward, roadmap and prioritization, and then talk a little bit about next steps and what the budget process will look like. You can go 2 slides forward. Thank you so much. So this is a timeline that you've seen before, but really just looking at when we had the approvals for the reinvestment plan. And then if you remember, last year at this time, we were supposed to do a joint city-county meeting, and it was canceled due to COVID-19. So we corresponded via email and got a copy of the approved plan to them that way. So this meeting coming up will actually be the first time we've physically had it, and I think potentially it will also be remote. Strategic planning started in the summer and wrapped up in August with the City Commission adopting its strategic plan and action agenda. And then in September, if you remember that, I believe was the first time that we had a joint GCRA board City Commission meeting. And at that meeting, we gave a full update of the reinvestment plan, and then also looked at every single kind of project or program that's on the list. So that was a really robust presentation. So next slide, please. So here's the roadmap. And one thing I can tell you is that I would say probably 80 to 85% of this is moving forward in some fashion. We will be going into just a high-level update on most of these initiatives tonight. I have members of the Caper department here to discuss some of their work and give you kind of an overview of how things have been prioritized, not only through the strategic planning effort, but our efforts as well to move things forward. Next slide. So just a few things to keep in mind. There are a lot of changes, some subtle, some not so subtle, between the way we operated as a statutory CRA and the way we operate now as a city department. So just number one, you know, in some of these districts, there was a lot of time left when we started having discussions about the future of the CRA, and really in planning for projects. When I think back to, you know, even 12 years ago, we had more kind of short-term projects and more long-term projects. And if you remember, a lot of times we would have to kind of save up for a few years to be able to move things forward. And so we always looked for kind of low-hanging fruit and also projects that really fit the goals of each redevelopment plan. Each redevelopment plan was a little bit different. Some were more prescriptive than others. Some were very vague. And so we were able to, I think, in the past, be flexible if the market changed, and we could prioritize potentially some other projects ahead of others. So this year, or excuse me, in this model, it's much different, you know, with one single district, one advisory board, and one fund. Things are beginning to be streamlined as the old TIF is spent down. But when thinking about our projects moving forward, we have a finite amount of time, and we have a very, very clear direction and clear areas to focus on. I also wanted to point out that as a separate agency, many functions were handled in-house, and as a city department, we are fully integrated into kind of all of the general government processes, committees, initiatives, and also subject to timelines and due dates, right, assigned therein. And then number 4, the separate CRA governing board versus city commission. I think one of the largest changes in this model is that we typically only go to the city commission when we need a yay or a nay. So we were spoiled and kind of had the type of relationship with the commission seated as a CRA board where they had the luxury to really just focus on our work once a month. And I feel like we're a lot more in the know of kind of the day-to-day of the CRA, and that's very different now. And then finally, in the past, we were the lead on all of the capital projects and programs, and I'd say now we're shifting to more of a funding mechanism for some capital projects that are led by other departments. And so I wanted to say all this to kind of set the groundwork for, you know, where we are now, and the changes and how that then changes the way that we prioritize things. Next slide, please. So a few things to consider again is that, you know, other partner departments that are working with us also have their own work plans. So this is in addition to their other work. Also that we have, you know, significant funding in 2 areas held over from the old CRA, and also projects that were holdovers from the old CRA. So just mentioning that, because those are projects that we intend to complete and continue to move forward. For instance, South Main was one, and then you can think of the Heritage Trail, which we will be going back out with a solicitation for. But those projects are held over, and there's no reason to hold them back. In fact, we're trying to move those forward quickly. Heartwood is another example of one of those. Also, you know, another factor for us was paying down the CRA's debt. That's something that everyone voted to do, and that has been done. And the only remaining debt that we have are the 2 or 3 development agreements, which will be paid out, I believe, in the next 2 to 3 years. And then finally, integrating new goals and deadlines from the city's strategic plan. So being involved in that process and some of our initiatives that came out of our reinvestment plan and are now included in the city's strategic plan really set priorities for us, including some funding and including associated timelines. Next slide. So this is the criteria that was listed in the reinvestment plan. And I wanted to just kind of bring it up that, this all came out of the work that we did in community engagement over those 5 to 6 months. And so, every project or program that ended up on the roadmap met this criteria and came from that work. This is a good litmus test when you kind of look through each project and how it accomplishes or meets not only the goals on the left-hand side, but the objectives rather, but also the vitality report factors, things that we know make for a successful initiative. Next slide. So just a reminder about the city's strategic plan goals, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are equitable community, sustainable community, a great place to live and experience, and a resilient economy. And just to show that our objectives really play into helping accomplish the goals that are listed in the city's strategic plan. Next slide. So here I'm going to go over a few of these projects just with a quick update so that when we return next month at the joint meeting, we're going to have more of a larger chart that will kind of show you how everything's moving forward and what phase we're in. So this presentation is just to kind of prep you all in your thinking about prioritization and about budget, because really our prioritizations are going to be shown based on where we appropriate the funding. So the Heartwood neighborhood is still moving forward. We're very close to being able to start our marketing campaign. We are finishing the contracts that will be used for the sales of those homes. And so we will be coming back to you, I believe, at the next meeting to kind of talk about where we are, show pictures, and then also get you all involved in the kickoff and some of the activities that we'll have around rolling out Heartwood neighborhood development. Business improvement grant, I mentioned earlier, we have our first completed application for your fellow board member, Mike Palmer, and excited to see the work that will be done on South Main on that building. We have, I believe, 2 more that are with historic buildings within the district. And as you know, that is the level 3, I think, of the program where the owners will qualify for more funding. So we're excited to see that. And we think that potentially we'll be coming back to you for an increase in that budget. And certainly for 22 and 23, we'll be budgeting more funding for these business improvement grants. Cornerstone development and GTech management are ongoing. We just finished our office space, and with that are also working with a consultant on reviewing the program at GTech. I mentioned before that last December, the note was paid off to the EDA, and we're trying to get the satisfaction letter, because what that means is we're no longer required to operate it as it has been operated for the past 2 decades. So we're working with someone to go ahead and really look at how the building was run and where there's opportunities and where there are constraints, and really working with leadership at the city and eventually y'all in the commission to talk about how we would like to reposition that for the future. I'll say that there's a little bit of deferred maintenance in the building and certainly some upgrades needed, but also some thinking about how we could better serve our local businesses, small local diverse businesses, and especially the East Gainesville community out of that building. So there will be more to come in the following months, and we're very excited to be a part of potentially repositioning that building. Innovation District, what we have listed here, really, we were doing development agreements, right, to continue the Southwest 9th Street extension to the north and the south, and that has been completed. The other two projects per se that would fall under this are in the streetscape initiatives, so 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue. So we've begun discussions with mobility and some other departments about potentially how we re-engage around the 2nd Avenue discussion and get that moving forward. And then the paint program was approved. We have a bid out, I believe. I don't know if it's posted right now or close to being posted, but to get painters and pressure washers on annual contract to roll out that program. Next slide. So these, I'll just kind of make a blanket statement about the streetscape projects. So number one, with the unfortunate event that happened on University Avenue, there is a lot of attention being paid to at least portions of that corridor right now by FDOT. We so far have not been involved in that, but there could be some way to kind of augment what ends up being rolled out on University Avenue. So we're interested to see what happens there. The other corridor improvements, Southwest Hawthorne Road, we had completed work many years ago on conceptual work on that corridor, and so we'll be revisiting that. And then Waldo and Williston Roads, we will need to engage with Public Works and Mobility on first, and really kind of figure out, you know, what is it that the community would like to see? You know, is this an actual streetscape project, or are we talking about really focusing on those corridors and working with the businesses adjacent to the corridor or on the corridor to make, you know, improvements in that sense? But, you know, there's obviously a lot of potential. I've been involved in a cross-functional team between the county and the city, really looking at the northern entrance to Gainesville down Waldo Road, and thinking about, you know, how can we turn that into a gateway, a welcoming gateway into our community from that northeast airport and, you know, out 39th Avenue. So those are moving forward, but I would say they're a little bit further behind the rest of the projects. Attainable housing strategies is where we house the 2 model block sites that we've come to you and spoken about, but also the programs. And we've been really focused on trying to get programs out the door, because those are completely within our control as far as doing the work, working with legal to make sure everything is up to snuff, and then also you know, making sure that we're addressing the community's needs in the right way through these programs and getting them approved and rolled out. So that's been a perfect effort during COVID as well. So community partnership grants, Tricia mentioned that we will be back to you with a program prior to year end. I will say that being a city department is a little bit different, and so, you know, we need to kind of figure out as a city, you know, which areas are funding certain types of activities, and of course ours would only be focused within the district, but, you know, making sure that we're augmenting and not duplicating what's already being offered. The neighborhood improvements programs, in discussions about Porters and Greater Duval, the thinking behind that, and also I think the community desire was really to look at infrastructure related issues in those neighborhoods. You know, what don't they have that other neighborhoods have? For example, contiguous sidewalk, curb and gutter. There's a lot of stormwater issues in those areas. And so we will likely be partnering with the Public Works Department on those to really kick off an analysis of what those issues are and working with the community to find out, with each community what their priorities are in addressing those. I think I did almost an update on every single one here, but if somebody's looking at the Heritage Trail. So the Heritage Trail, I mentioned earlier that we have a solicitation out. We had one before and received a single response. So we are trying again in a different way with a lot more outreach prior to try to get more competition on that project. So hopefully this time we'll get it right. Next page. So these are the projects listed that are with others. And I will mention a few before I turn it over to Eric. The University Avenue corridor improvements I mentioned earlier. So working with Melissa McCready and Mobility on that, and just interested to see if there's an opportunity for us to contribute on improvements along that corridor. And then Strategic Initiatives has been assigned the Food and Mobility Hub, and Commissioner Johnson, either a week or two ago, made a very long motion. I can't remember how many parts it has. Maybe 16. I don't remember. But that's something that was already within our strategic plan, and the desire, excuse me, is to see some sort of grocery store / mobility hub somewhere in East Gainesville. And there's a very direct motion that we're kind of piecing apart, and it's being divided amongst many people within the city to try to move that motion forward. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that one because it's become a priority. And we're kind of looking for ways to get involved with strategic initiatives on that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for a sec to Eric Bradfeld, who will walk you through the other initiatives that are being led by Caper and Colliers in some instances. And then I'll come back to wrap up.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
Members of the board. Nice to see you all in person. I wanted to preface my remarks before I just talk about the projects briefly to say that I wanted to come down today because I want to participate in these meetings moving forward. And I think it's important sometimes to see we've all been in this virtual world, to see the flesh and blood here. I also wanted to say that I feel like with many of these initiatives, although in my role, we're maybe leading some of these things, I think many of us who have been involved in these types of efforts know that it's always a collaboration and a team effort with many different parties. So the fact that some of these are shown as responsible to departments, it doesn't mean that we don't have an integrated team among city staff and GCRA that are working through these projects. So I just wanted to make sure that there was confidence that we're all on the same team here, because we all have to be on the same team to get these things accomplished. And then finally, we as an office were just a little concerned because we saw in the deliberations last month that you had here on your annual report that there were some concerns about reflected in your report about transparency and accountability of our office. But I feel like we can say pretty straightforward that we will be coming back to the GCRA board pretty routinely, and also have been participating in these meetings since we've really been set up as an office. So what I tried to do for you is in your backup, there's a memo in your backup that really is an indication of all the projects that our office is working on. And it gives you the update on every single project we're working on, because we are working on the ones that are listed here, but we also are working on projects citywide, because we have a citywide function. So yes, we are leading some of these projects, But as you'll see from the memo, I think I have 21 projects listed on it that are just dealing with the real estate proposition that we're involved in. And then there are others that are assigned as well. And so I've provided that information just so you get an idea of what our office is about. I've also put in your backup the memo which set up our office so that you know who we are, which is 3 of us, myself and Sarit Sela and Kara Brecken. That's our office. They're on the line tonight as well. I've given you the budget, and I've given you all of the everything that's involved with the functions of the office. And if you ever have any questions about any of that, my office is always open. I'm in the office at least 3 times a week, so happy to talk to you about it. But anyway, on these projects, I would say that for most of them that are listed by Capers, and we're working very closely with Colliers because they are the real estate firm that we've brought on. They have sort of a corporate presence, but then on site on the ground here in Gainesville, where their local person is Rory Cousseau, who many of us know, and they're advising on some of the real estate matters. But really, I would say on 8th Avenue in Waldo, the former RTS site, and the Power District, really our focus right now is intentional citizen engagement, because that's really the direction we've been given by the City Commission, that our citizen engagement is supposed to be intentional. And we're putting in a lot of time trying to come up with our engagement plan to make sure that we're inclusive and hitting everybody who's involved in these projects. And I'm talking about people who are professionals, but I'm talking about the neighborhood and adjacent residents that may be affected by the projects as well. So we're doing that. And then in terms of the list of items in the memo, you also see that we're heavy into the due diligence right now, because we're basically collecting information on the different sites. The pending issue on 8th and Waldo is we're probably going to have to do a little bit more environmental analysis. We are probably going to try to go ahead and do an update of an existing phase 1, because phase 1 was done on that property about 10 years ago, and we feel like it probably needs to be updated to see if there's any more definitive direction there. It may not be the case. It may not be the case, but I think we need to get that checked out because of some things that have come up there. On the RTS site, I just spoke to Jesus Gomez today, and we were getting ready to try to move forward on getting that property on the market and deal with some due diligence issues as well. Let's see, the downtown strategic plan, I think you all have a sense of that. The consultant was here, I believe, in December, and they are working on their engagement brief right now, and then they'll be bringing that back to the GCRA board and the City Commission before we go live with that. And then finally, the Power District. We just had a meeting with internal staff, inclusive of GCRA and Colliers on Friday, this past Friday. And you are going to see the presentation at the joint City Commission GCRA board meeting on April 7th. And that's going to be sort of Colliers' review of the site and basically next steps, proposed next steps. The last item on that list that in the spreadsheet that I'll mention is the job training and career development program. And our office, this is really a space that the city hasn't really traditionally and historically been involved in as the lead. But we're starting to get involved in working with the Gainesville Area Chamber on the Malcolm Bidwell Center process. There's a feasibility analysis that's underway. We just had a new ramp-up meeting a couple of weeks ago, so that's moving forward. We have an item coming to the City Commission on March 25th, which is a potential repositioning of the Job Corps property in the Airport Industrial Park, because that property, as you know, historically did a lot of job training in the community, and there's a thought that maybe we could reposition that. It's got some disposition process it has to go through the federal government, but we're gonna work through that as well. So I feel like that's what I'd like to present to you tonight, and I'm happy to answer questions about these projects or anything on the list or anything about Caper or
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I know that this body sat for months and months and months coming up with, through public meetings and coming up with the priorities that were on the list. And so some of these are personal to others and to everyone, and people have invested a lot of time. So I know there's questions. So I'm looking at the lights. Do I have anybody that has questions of any of these projects? I'm assuming we could ask questions of Sarah's projects too. Pardon?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I did have just a few wrap-up slides if you want me to get through those really quick to give people time to think.
If you want
Would
to,
you like-
go for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just a few things. The next steps would be our next meeting, as I mentioned, will be going over the proposed FY 22-23 fiscal year budget. And with that, we'll be bringing a more comprehensive roadmap that really takes the projects, shows all the current funding appropriated towards each effort, and then different timelines for the upcoming deliverables. So that will help us, of course, make those proposed budget appropriations. As Eric mentioned, we are really coordinating interdepartmentally with other groups. So much of this information we'll have to get, from other sources as well. And then, again, just as Eric mentioned, Caper and others will keep coming back, to give us updates on those projects that are led by others. Next slide. So this is the city's budget calendar, and just the important thing to note is that the commission meetings are April 12th through 26th, where they work on developing the budget and running it by the commissioners. And so our April 7th joint meeting is the meeting that we have that will kind of fit within this overall calendar that was given to us to meet the budget deadlines. And then finally, our recommendation was just to hear the presentation and provide feedback, but we hope it was helpful, and then also hope that it kind of gets you thinking for the budget cycle about appropriations, and we'll look forward to getting more in depth into this at the next joint meeting. Very much.
All right, who's flashing? Okay. Mr. Atkins-Tufts.
Awesome. Thank you for this presentation. Ms. Brazil, something we've talked about a bunch in, like, I think 3 of these meetings is this process of getting pedestrians across Waldo Road and the safety there. I'm curious, in which of these initiatives is that covered?
That would be the Waldo Wilson Road corridor.
Cool, so that's the low priority, not listed one.
I'm sorry?
So that's low priority and it's not, what does not listed mean again?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't go into that. So not listed as a city priority. So what Chelsea did in making these columns was to show on the left how well these met the actual criteria in the plan, as far as low, medium, high, and then city priority would be if they're included in the city's strategic plan and action agenda. So it's okay that it's not listed as a priority with the city. A lot of these are priority projects within our plan, and if they're in the plan, it's our job to get them done.
Cool. So even though it's low priority, it's still being addressed?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And that really ties into the whole 8th and Waldo conversation under that project as well. So we will be absolutely.
Definitely the 8th and Waldo, and I mean also the Hawthorne Trail. You're talking about what happened on University Avenue. I mean, pedestrians are crossing the Hawthorne Trail. I think I told people get killed every year. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Good question.
Member Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. I'm having a brain fart.
It's all good.
So my question is for Sarah. Thank you for the presentation, first of all. I'm a little concerned about the prioritization. The prioritization of the Cornerstone development being low. When we're talking about economic development, sustainability issues of the community, making it a great place to live, I don't think we should be sleeping on real estate that should be used to bring jobs and more economic synergy and revenue to the community. G-Tech is there. You're doing things with the building, making improvements. It's an opportunity for other things to be there too that can serve the community very much directly. I look at our work as being important, and the work that you do very important, but it isn't necessarily a direct contact with the community, and it doesn't provide jobs for the community. So I would highly recommend that we change that cornerstone development priority from low to at least medium. I would even say high, because it is a very key geographical location and can serve to bring in businesses and other opportunities for our community. With a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, let's not just get, I don't know the word, but 8th and Waldo isn't the only place in East Gainesville that we should be considering when talking about doing things that are synergistic and brings more revenue to the community. Thank you.
Any other questions from members? Member Palmer.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of two things. One of them, the streetery, I see that on there. That I think that's absolutely fantastic project. I think that's one of the greatest things that I've seen in a while. Just I bike through there daily, and so I'm really happy to see that as something listed on here. I know it's not listed on the CRA projects or whether it is listed under there, but I think that's something really great to see. I think I'll reiterate one of the concerns that I had mentioned at a previous meeting, is generally about the real estate and the disposition of the real estate. I would really like to, or hope that people will keep in mind that, you know, there may be some great opportunities and great ideas for, I mean, you know, this may sound self-serving, but for smaller businesses to try and take ownership of real estate, even if it isn't trying to buy a giant whole parcel and do a large development. I think we miss out on a lot of unique opportunities and unique things for businesses who obviously couldn't take down a 17-acre parcel, but might be trying to take down something smaller. Same thing with other, you know, even smaller business owners, those type of things. So I'd love to see it, or at least kind of hear some you know, thoughts or feedback on whether or not, you know, for how that is moving forward with Colliers. But yeah, just is, that's my thing. But thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think for sure when we start thinking through the positioning of some of the larger sites, that there will certainly be a component that is, you know, geared towards probably small business development. I can give you a good example right now of it's in my write-up, but there's nothing, in my experience, there's nothing like a catalyst to make larger projects move forward, because all of a sudden it starts lighting a fire under people. So an example from the actual Power District is we have the Catalyst building, and we have UF has a presence in the Catalyst building, as does the city, as does a drone company. And that drone company is looking to expand, and they don't have a lot of space right now, but they might want to expand into some larger space in that area. So, you know, we probably are going to be looking at opportunities there, and that would be a real-world example that's happening right now. But I think those other examples or possibilities will come to the fore as we start really thinking through the granular side of positioning.
The assistant manager, Bowie's got her hand up. I'm going to grab her real quick.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. And I apologize earlier, I could hear every third word. So you see me signed in two places. It's me and my evil twin on the laptop and my phone. I just wanted to quickly draw attention to a few things. One, I think the way to really look at this is to, and when I say this, the backup that was provided by Eric, it's a lot of information. What Sarah, I think, tried to do is to show you in the order of top, right, based on priority. So just because I don't want to assume that you all have looked through this and realize that really your number 1 through 5 would be those top priority projects. The streetery project, just to make sure that we're on the same page, there are 2 different streeteries. The temporary one we call GNV Commons, formerly Lot 10. The one that's referenced here is the more permanent streetery project. So you will be seeing that again, because I believe there's going to be a request for funding when that proposal is ready to move forward. And then just a quick update on number 12, which was the GNV Cares for Business. We did not end up expending all of the dollars allocated. So we are actually right now processing a budget transfer so that we can move those unspent dollars that came from College Park funds back, so that you're aware of that. We didn't use all of that funding. So there are a few areas in here in the memo, and this was very high level, but just to draw your attention to it. So the RTS site, for sure, you'll see there's a reference here, some resource allocation. So there are some things in here that will come back before this body, right, for funding requests. But really, if you're going to line this up with the presentation that Sarah has put together, really number 1 through 5 would be those top priority projects. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Brenda Gomez.
That just put things really into clarity for me. First and foremost, talking to my colleagues, we've been asking for months and months and months and months and months about prioritization of projects. And I think Member Dixon, when I left, I think she had something when I went back and listened to the meeting, had some points. We simply just wanted an update. And when you go through this, I'm not seeing an update. I'm seeing things that might be happening, but not an update on what things are going on. So I want to draw some attention to some things. And we kind of got a lot of stuff thrown at us. So indulge me for a minute, please, because I went through this and it just belabors the point of clarity. So first, if we can go back to the slide where it shows GCRA team lead projects and GCAR projects led by others, I want to point out a contrast. If we can have the double screen GCRA team lead projects and GCRA projects led by others, it's a 2-screen. So our backup, it is top priority, high priority, medium priority. So colleagues, here's what I'd like to point out to you. Number 1, which really stands out here to me, and this is what I've been saying. So Mr. Brentfeld brought up the point of comments that were made about transparency. Well, there was something very analogous to that. It wasn't just made to be made. And this is what I'm talking about. We must go back to the genesis of when we were created as a board. We were created to address economic investment and reinvestment in areas of blight and opportunity in communities that have traditionally been underserved, which is our urban core, in our east side specifically. That is what the county charges. That's why they were giving such a big stink from the county. When we called us, the county made a big deal and was ready to do away with the CRA as a whole. And the city said, hey, no, we can get this right. Well, we did get it right? We got it right by having a united board, which is us. And so I want to point out to you in this look at who is leading projects. If we do contrast, just simple contrast, for the GCAR team lead projects, low to medium to high, these are basically not even analogous to what CAPER is taking, which are top priorities. Things that are going to have economic impact and investment are not even coming to us. Colliers doesn't come to us for accountability when we're supposed to be the advisory arm to the city commission and from the county commission. And these are bypassed by a city department of 2 or 3 people and Colliers, who has a no-bid contract with the city manager. So explain to me how we have our top projects and we wonder why we can't keep seeing these projects. Because they don't come to us. They circumvent us. Now, I appreciate the fact that Mr. Bredfeld is here tonight, and I appreciate that. But when we were saying it before, all of us up here know we didn't see them much at all. And top priority, okay, 8th and Waldo, Capers and Collier, not GCRA. Top priority, downtown strategic plan, Caper and sustainable development. And then you look at even a medium, the power district mobility plan. What I'm getting at is you have a department, so we got $70 million from the county commission that we have over 10 years to spend. $70 to $78 million, which we're supposed to be the advisory arm to the city commission. That's our job. So if a department that doesn't even report to us, the only department that is charged to report to us is the GCRA. These are GCRA funds. So each time, this is what I was trying to point out to Member Fox last time, when we were having these motions, these projects that we're having, you like the street eater, remember, Palmer, right? You liked it. Well, let me point out something to you in the street eater. Go to 9C, everybody. In 9C, it says, adjoining property and business owners will be engaged tomorrow, 3/17. Clutch our pearls. They're meeting tomorrow for input on the future presentation. And they're going to come back to the GCRAB board. Why? Because they're going to ask us for more monies that are laudable projects. But we wonder why when we had these things that we presented, these things right here, when we came up with ideas about top projects that we were going to do, it included not just 8th and Waldo. 8th and Waldo was supposed to be GCRA. Does anybody on here seen this collaboration? So I guess Ms. Bowie or to whoever, I guess we hear about teamwork and collaboration. Why is the top projects that are not part of the GCRA, which is supposed to be charged with reinvestment of eliminating urban blight, urban decay, and supposed to have an economic impact to areas that are traditionally underserved, not happening? It's not happening because you have a level of bureaucracy which the manager has put in place that circumvents this. And that's exactly what is happening here. So I guess the question becomes who's playing the fool? Because I'm not Boo-Boo the fool today. So for me, I guess we need to have a question with the county commission. Say, hey, is this what you're charging? Do you want these dollars going to some, bureaucracy that, doesn't have any accountability? When you were charging the city, you said to the city, you want to eliminate urban blight, economic urban blight and decay. And some of these projects that we have, and I remember Atkins Tuff, member Dixon, member Bush, he's not here tonight, asking about many projects that we could do to build these projects up. I remember you asked about a framework, member Dixon. You asked about a framework and projects. Our chair has asked numerous times, when are we going to start seeing these big projects? We're talking about it's going slow. It's not going slow. If you look at this memo, this just talks about we've had meetings here. We had meetings. And then let's look at, I want to go to the very front of this on 8th and Waldo Road. It talks about in this letter, and I want to find it on here, where it basically talks about we really don't want to do anything with 8th and Waldo. What we want to do is leave the stadium as it is, put some facade on it. Basically, this is not giving us our best. And this is not, Mr. Bredfeld, this is not about you. This really is not. So do not take this personally. And even to Sarit, who I know is probably listening. My angst with this is the bureaucracy and the process. When I talked about having transparency, it was exactly this. It wasn't a mistake. There was no misunderstanding. It was this. And so for me, if we do a simple contrast of this, it's right here. They're telling us who matters and who doesn't by what it does. So Collier's reports to the manager. He doesn't report to us. He reports to the manager, the Collier's, the real estate arm. Caper is a department of, it's not a department, it's an office of the city. It reports directly to the manager. Secondly, so I guess Ms. Bowie, I have a question about, so we have low, medium, high, etc. How is it that we have a nearly $70 million budget, but nobody's coming to us, and they're coming now, but we don't get these projects because they're having community engagement, which we had last year or the year before last. We know because we were all a part of that community engagement. The manager is reinventing the wheel. We've had community engagement. And you know who did a great job of that community engagement, colleagues? That was Sarah Vidal. Sarah Vidal and the staff for the GCRA. And member Bowie can correct me if I'm wrong, but we did that. We know because we had many of those. We had them at churches, many parts of this city, we had community engagement. And we're losing time here because we're going into our second year our second year where we're still not doing big projects. But if you notice, the manager will bring a street eatery where it'll be X amount of dollars for this. It'll be another small project for this. And they're all valuable projects. So just like last time, when we had that homelessness issue, nobody wanted to be the jerk and say, hey, this is not on our purview. But one of our members made it and said, hey, we're just going to make it because we don't want to look like the bad guys here. And of course we don't. That strap, they quoted the strat plan. The strat plan is a bunch of garbage. The strat plan is a strategic plan that is sitting out here telling us what we should do. And it doesn't even make sense. It was a reach. It was a stretch. The manager said, well, it fits here. It was a stretch, folks, a stretch. And the people that are getting hoodwinked and bamboozled is all of us up here because we're being circumvented. And we've seen this behavior before. We've seen it before. And if all you got to do is go back and look in South Florida to see this behavior being done before. We are the piggy bank to fund pet projects. And I think that's not what we're supposed to be doing. So for me, I want to hear from you all, but this is where my angst and acrimony comes in. The writing is on the wall, and I digress.
The city manager, Feldman, had his hand up.
Of course he
Give him a
did.
chance to respond.
Thank you. And I'm not going to get into a long debate. I think we've talked about a lot of these issues already. But I do want to correct a couple things. One is Mr. Grundy Gomez said that the Collier's contract was a no-bid contract. That's not true. The city went out for an RFP. It received 2 proposals. An independent selection committee made a ranking, and ultimately the city commission approved that. Number 2, he references $70 million coming from the county. $70 million is not coming from the county. The revenue for the special revenue fund at the GCRA department comes both from the city and the county on there, and so there's joint. And again, I just want to point out the issue on 8th and Waldo. There is a line, and the 8th and Waldo project is bifurcated. So part of it is within the CRA, GCRA boundaries, and the other part of it is not. And so the GCRA Special Revenue Fund cannot do things on the west side of the property, which if we are going to do a transformational project, we need to have all the property included on the site. And the community engagement process is because there is not a consensus of what should go on 8th and Waldo on there. Mr. Grundy Gomez may have in his mind what he believes should go there, but the GCRA has not indicated to the commission specifically what it thinks as a body should go on there. We've had that discussion in the past, and the purpose here is to talk about the different roles and responsibilities of departments, offices within the city. We're not creating a bureaucracy. We're creating a collaborative opportunity for all departments to participate in the growth of the city. They're consistent with a strategic plan that was prepared and adopted by the city commission. And if the perception is that the strategic plan is garbage, that certainly can be one person's opinion on it or multiple people's opinion on it, but it was adopted by the city commission in August of 2020, and that's the plan that we are working towards. So again, I'm not going to get into a long discussion. We've gone over these issues in the past, and I think you're going to have a joint meeting with the commission. I think from that joint meeting, what I'm hoping for is for the GCRA advisory board to give input to the commission as to what you think the highest priority projects should be for the city. And we will, tackle these as a city team, both the GCRA department as well as the other departments that can provide the appropriate support. Thank you. I'm done with needing to respond.
You have a follow-up?
I do.
City manager.
I do. I do acknowledge the manager is correct about the property on 8th and Waldo being bifurcated. The problem is we talk about there's no consensus. Well, we haven't had an opportunity to have consensus because it's not really come before us, and where we could talk about 8th and Waldo outside of us doing it. So in all fairness, it goes back to we haven't had that opportunity. But we've been asking for it for months and months and months. So, okay.
Member Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, I think I don't necessarily follow that same
logic and sight when I see this. I feel like I've seen multiple organizations come up here, multiple organizations saying, hey, these are the roles that are happening, and all of these things that need to come together to even, like Ape and Waldo, we don't even know what we can do there until they do the environmental study on it, until they get that new updated phase 1 back. Sure, you know, that takes time, but like the project like this, I mean, at least to me, you know, even just the due diligence to understand what we can do, if you were to do this as a private person, I would say this is 8 months to a year of work just figuring out if we could do that. And there are multiple layers of things that go on. So, I mean, to me, one of my biggest concerns and sort of a tough spot that I have is I feel like we are in many ways spending a lot of time criticizing these people for not bringing us what we want versus trying to find ways to actually move forward and take actionable steps that we can say, all right, cool, we are here, what is going next? I mean, and they've come forward with, you know, as far as I understand, what's going next with Abe and Waldo is figuring out the environmental issues that are there, because that is a massive hurdle and a massive headache for anybody who's going to do anything there. And I think we're going to run into that type of thing on pretty much every project that we're looking at. Any sort of giant major project that we want to see has these core levels of just obnoxious, I mean, for lack of a better term, obnoxious crap that you have to walk through just to be able to even know what can go there, what can be done, what can be built. I mean, you know, the water table is 4 feet underneath the ground there. So if we have any sort of issues with petroleum potentially leaking into the ground, we have to figure out how that is going to even be addressed before we can even decide what could even go on those things. So that's just where I'm at with this. Like, to me, when I look at this, I see we've got 3 people leading 21 projects listed. To me, that doesn't seem like enough people, but I know that there are a ton of other people that are involved just to even keep any of these things moving. We only see a piece. And so I think that's probably why it feels like it's just small you know, 1 or 2 people taking steps on this, but I see it, to me, I see a whole lot going on that a whole lot of people are involved in, and not just, you know, some small group that's just trying to control everything. But I mean, that's just the way I see it. And I don't know if that, you know, resonates, and, you know, I'm not trying to be, you know, combative or anything, but that's how I see this. Is I actually see this as a lot of people putting in a whole lot of work to get to this point even. So.
Mayor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to redirect a question back to Sarah. I never got a response on my comments about the Cornerstone project. Sarah, are you there?
Yes.
Thank you. So I don't want to become a victim of the very thing that I just said. We don't want to sleep on economic development in that area. So my suggestion or even recommendation to change the prioritization of that from low to high, what are your feelings, and why was it even placed as a low when you sit on the very property that is facilitating our business?
So I think the reason is because the level of engagement that we have right now with that property is more passive, since the board, it's commercially listed with a local firm. I think what we need to do is, you know, bring them back in for an update. And then also, I kind of think of Cornerstone and GTech as one. So it is a huge priority for us to build that out. And I will say that there are a lot of discussions around the site and the potential use of the site, those developable properties. I have personally met a few developers out there to look at the sites. It's not that we haven't had interest, but we have not had a letter of interest, nothing formal. And so I think it's more that, we completed the project at Cornerstone, which was the infrastructure project, to get the utilities stubbed out. That project is complete. We finished getting Mary U on site and in creating that development, or excuse me, that purchase and sale to concept companies of that piece. And we still have it listed, for other potential uses and for purchase. So I think it's a matter of time. And I don't think that the low really represents like how we feel about the project, you know what I'm saying? But it's more that there's not a high level of engagement for us right now on those pieces, if that makes sense.
I don't think it's just a matter of an engagement, but I think it's also a matter of perception and also thinking about it and being engaged with it from our standpoint. That we should be thinking about it, like you said, we should be bringing the people that are working with that back into the picture. We talked about marketing and how to reach out to other businesses. We don't just need to settle to leave it with them. That's another way that we sleep on this stuff. If we depend on other people to do things that we're trying to do, things a lot of times don't get done. So I want to recommend that how you feel about it, how we even practically work about it, should be reflected in this document, that it is a high priority. That's what I'm asking.
Okay. Member Brenda Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Replying to my colleague, Mr. Palmer, I take it in the spirit that you gave it, and I appreciate that. Here's what I want to point out to you. This isn't anything new. We have 3 years of data. So I want to give you something analogous to what we're talking about with 8th and Waldo. So with 8th and Waldo, you can look at it and compare it to something similar to your business down on Lot 10. Lot 10, anytime something wants to happen in contrast and perpetuity, for an example, the county was involved in the process of 8th and Waldo. And so anytime there seems to be something, the county manager actually tried to say there was a landfill on Citizens Field. Now, let's point that out. If that is not true too, Mr. Bredfeld and others credit, sometimes you just got to do a study, right? You got to do a study. And you're talking about water. The real landfill, if you want to really know, is over by Williams. That's a fact. And you could do the ground soil contamination. Just so you know, and these are facts, ecological studies and some other studies have been done for 3 years, dating back prior to this manager, before him. So I'm not coming with something I don't know. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Number 2 is the biggest information that we can gather for this is the memo that is put out. What's the vision, the process, and timeline for 8th and Waldo? That's really what this comes down to. So it's not about what's just in my mind. What I've been talking about has been very consistent. We want something that makes sense, that's just not keeping a 71-year-old antiquated football stadium that doesn't have any use. You missed a couple meetings because I went to Birmingham and brought back, and Ms. Fox wasn't even here for that meeting, but we got a developable project that I presented that we could actually do as an example. So here's the other thing that contrasts that. When we look at development, when do we give our best to something? And Ms. Fox, if you were here, I apologize for that. So here's the thing. There is a lot of times where development doesn't happen, and Mr. Bredfeld has been working many years in economic development, so I give him deference to that. But many times we don't have development in the East Side or communities of color, specifically African Americans, because of illicit notions, implicit bias, systemic racism. Here's what we do now. Development is, if you look at a project on the West End in Birmingham, they have a project that is attracted, and we had this project that was presented by Faye Oates, as well as myself, and some residents went up to Birmingham. It is absolutely viable if we do. The other thing is we have a public-private partnership potentially in the works to have this done too. So it's not just one or two people that want to do this. We want to do it, but to the manager's point too, nobody just wants to fight. But on the same token, we've seen these games before. So what my interest is, again, so what's the timeline? The same thing goes with number 3 on this list. What's the vision? What's the timeline? What's the process? Because outside of that, we're just spinning our wheels like we have the last 2 years. and I've been very consistent. I think Member Pollitt, Sharon Pollitt can attest to that, and some others that I've been asking. I want a viable project, something I'm happy to have. It doesn't have to be what I want. It's not about me. I have nothing to gain economically from this, but I do care. And there's been a lot of stakeholders in this town that have pulled the rug from under a community that does not have it. We've known that we've had a food desert for over 3 years. So to sit here and say we need a food mobility hub, we've known that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, but I do hear that in the spirit it's given.
Member Fox?
Presentation by Faye and Ms. Bowie introduced her. I would like to see that conversation move up on our priority list. The 8th and Waldo project. I think we need to, and I'm hoping that the board is in agreement with me. It's not just something that I want, but I'm hoping this whole board would agree to it. We need to put that up high on the priority list. I mean, we had the presentation last month. There's nothing on the agenda or no discussion about it this month. We don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. So I'm asking staff and hopefully Mr. Manager and Ms. Bowie, if you all would go ahead and get some things in. Perhaps we need to talk about it every month. It needs to be on our agenda every month so we could see some action. I mean, we saw it last month, and then this month there's nothing mentioned about it, and I'm a little disappointed about that. So is there any way, Mr. Manager, that we could move some research or whatever we need to do, I say, yes, phase 1. Let's go ahead and try to get that moving as soon as possible. Is there any way we could do that, Mr. Manager?
Oh, it's already in the works. We're in the process of ordering the phase 1 for the site. We had its old phase 1 on there, but I asked to have it redone because it seemed to have some open statements, and I thought since it's been a while, we probably ought to get another one done. So we're in the process of doing that.
Okay, so every month, staff, can we have an update on where we are with the Waldo and 8th Avenue project? Can we have an update every month so we could try to move forward with it? Thank you.
Is that Ms. Dixon? Yes.
Just picking up on that, I remember the CPUH advisory board agendas always had a section at the bottom that gave an update status of all the projects that were in the works. Perhaps staff could start doing that on our agendas too, just so we get that. That was always really helpful, and it didn't require us to really discuss anything, but we got the update and people could ask questions.
We got more lights. All right. Let's see. We got Member Mitchell.
Yes, my question is for Mr. Greco. To me, I look at this as in terms of these responsibilities, in terms of expertise and experience. And so I realistically see the CRA as not having a lot of experience with this. So it makes sense to me that they don't have the lead role. However, this here is a good start. What you've sent us, that kind of gives me some assurance that there is effort to have transparency and a good relationship as far as a team, that you mentioned that we all are on the same side. I heard that. I think what I need from you is more of how you envision how the GCRA role on this team is, and how do you ensure that there's not disturbing missteps, that we've kind of historically kind of had in moving these things forward, that we really care about, and just sometimes just seem to be having a misalignment in terms of follow-through. I think that's been our problem.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I mean, I like the idea of giving an update on each of these projects just as part of your, you know, a written update, and or when the board wants some more information or a detailed presentation, we can do that. I mean, anytime. I mean, it's, I think we're gonna probably be integrated into the meetings a little bit more routinely. So I feel like that's one way that you can have a check-in on what's going on with these things. I mean, I have to tell you, on all these projects, I mean, we are working on a collegial basis with GCRA staff. I mean, we have folks that we're working together on looking at the power district. We have a working group that has at least a couple of people from the GCRA on 8th and Waldo project. The downtown master plan, the same thing. So, I mean, we're kind of tied at the hip a little bit, I would say. And so I think these are all moving forward mechanically. So I think that's the way it's gonna work. And really, that's really the way you get things done. You have to collaborate and have many people involved in these things. And it's not just the local government, it's the institutions in town sometimes, you know, Santa Fe College and maybe university. It's private industry has to be involved. They have to be part of it. So you have to have all those players involved in the process, I think, and that's how we intend to move forward on all these things.
My follow-up is sometimes what our experience with the board has been is like decisions have been made about certain things that we felt like we should have had involvement in terms of our perspective, our input, and I think that's really the crust of some of the issues that we have when we're trying to work on projects like these. There are a lot of projects, like you say, and there's a lot of moving parts, and so it's like we're wanting due diligence and the care to make sure that we're included in things that pertain to us, and kind of a consciousness about, hey, the GCRA board may be concerned about this particular point or issue. Maybe we need to hold off on decision making and give them an opportunity to look at it and get their input.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a public servant, so you can come to me anytime. It's a small town. Come to my office or give me a call. I'm just right down in the Thomas Center. I mean, when we open up again, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm around, and if you have a concern as a board member, you don't have to go through a whole bureaucracy. Just pick up the phone or shoot me an email. Say, Eric, what the heck is going on with this thing? I mean, it's all about, you know, human relationships here, so I don't think it's an issue.
I will take you up on that. I think that is based on information that is in our court to be able to have a concern about. Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts. I want to make sure you hear me. There's a lot of moving parts that we may not get insight on, and then later it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what happened here? Mm-hmm. You know, and so I'm talking about that side of it, the ability to respond and give you a call up about that thing. You know, I'm willing to do that exchange, but I just want to make sure that there's more of a consciousness, a conscientiousness about GCRA being a part of the team. We're a new part of the team with the city. And so I think historical ways of doing things, traditional ways, habits, there needs to be adjustments. Just like this GCRA board had to make adaptations with being under the city's governance. You know, a lot of changes. So I think we're asking for more consideration, more conscientiousness about GCRA's part of the team and the role they play and their input as these big processes and mechanisms go forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric Palmer.
Thanks. You know, one thing I do, just sort of to address some of the comments, one thing I think I at least just because personally I've fairly recently been through development projects. One thing I'd like to remind people is that these things just take forever. I mean, in my own personal experience, I was ready to go. Everything was ready to go, and then essentially got delayed about a year just because of procedural things and stuff like that. That, that kind of thing happens, and it just consistently happens, even in private sectors. And so when we add a public sector and all these different teams that are coordinating, things are going to slow down. And one concern I have is that if we as the GCRA are trying to be more involved on individual day-to-day sort of decisions, I think that's going to unfortunately slow things down a little bit further, where, if they're coming to us to say, hey, all right, the phase one showed there, and this is what I anticipate is likely going to happen, that the phase one environmental evaluation is going to do some historical research. That historical research is going to show that there is some sort of questionable environmental thing that somebody's going to have to figure out. That means that there's going to now have to be a phase two, much more robust environmental evaluation, which those things can take just 3 to 6 months just to even get through that process. I mean, and that's if people are already on the get-go and already ready. And so, I worry that if we are trying to interject ourselves in that, where, say, the phase one is done, and then now they're coming back to us to say, hey, do you guys approve a phase two starting? The obvious answer for us would be, we would have a lot of discussion about it, but the obvious answer would be, yes, let's get the phase two moving. Let's keep everything going. So that's, one of my sort of, pits of my stomach sort of hesitations with a lot of what's going on with our board is that we seem to tend to just not, I don't know. I guess I don't know how to say that without just sort of wandering off a random tangent, but I think I just would hope people will keep in mind that, especially these big projects, the 8th and Waldo project is probably, at least in my mind, probably going to outlast most of our tenure on this board. So as long as we are setting the spirit, we are setting the guiding principles, and are finding competent people that can take and champion these things moving forward, then eventually, yes, they will come to light. I mean, Depot Park took how many years to even get moving? So,
over 20.
And that's not, and that's just sort of a thing with that, but, please don't take this as criticism, because I'm not trying to berate anybody or anything, but I just, it kind of feels a little heavy to constantly kind of be going after these organizations that are honestly trying to do their best with a million different things going on. But yes.
Thank you. Noted and very valid reasoning. So I think it's just I don't know if I would think do we start the next project? Is looking at the previous project is more important. So I think there's a little bit of I think there's discretion that comes to play here where we fit in, that I'm asking. It's not like GCRA should be micromanaging the project. That's just unreasonable. We just can't do that. But at pivotal points where things really matter and make sense is what I'm asking.
I also want to say something to you.
You finished?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Member Grundy Gomez.
I take it again in the spirit that it's given, but understand it cuts both ways. There's a community of folks that have, it's trust, and trust is a hard thing to gain. But I will take, Mr. Bradfield, I had a question for you. I will take you up on your offer in the spirit that you are, and I actually will double down in the fact that I've spoken with your ACM, Phil Mann, in the spirit of this, but I'll take you up on your offer to meet with you, because trust is a very important thing. And this is not personal, but what it is somebody that, when I'm unapologetic when it comes to caring about the area in which I reside, live, work, and play. That said, if we're all in this together, let's all really be in this together. So I also wanted to move on it, but I'll wait, Mr. Chair. I wanted to make a motion. You saw my project, Mr. Bredfeld, that was presented. Ms. Oates came behind and presented it. We don't have to have competing projects with the county when it comes to what they're doing versus what we're doing. That project that we were talking about, it doesn't have to be in the scope and size, but it's something to work from. And I guess for me is the letter that we have here for February 4th gives me some pause. And I'd like to talk to you about that offline.
Absolutely.
All right, and I digress, thank you.
All right, City Manager Feldman had his hand up.
I'll be brief, and then I apologize because I do have to leave. But I did want to point out that there's a line between management and policy. And so take like the phase 1, phase 2. I have a fiduciary obligation to ensure that, properties are safe. And that's why I've initiated the phase 1. If the phase 1 comes back and says that there's a phase 2, we will certainly let the board, the advisory board, know that. But I'm going to be starting that phase 2 immediately if that's the conclusion of a phase 1. So we'll keep the board apprised of developments, but we need to keep the flow of work going as well, and make sure that we address issues that are identified.
Any other lights, any other comments from our board?
Did have a motion?
I don't see any. Mr. Breckfeld, thank you very much for the update. I think this goes a long way to saying that if we can establish more regular communication, it will help everybody. Thank you.
Chair, I did have a motion for that.
Oh, you got a motion?
Yes,
All
I
right.
wanted to move in the spirit of what Ms. Member Fox was saying. I want to move that we have further consideration, not just for updates, but we can look at that project as in scope for what was Ms. Oates and what myself presented regarding the crossplex as something that we could look to as a model and foundation to move forward from in scope, and even to be presented in community engagement as a foundation for something to move forward on 8th and Waldo. And I move that's my motion.
Second.
Who's second? Okay, so we've got a first and a second. So I'm trying to understand the motion.
Okay, so I'm asking that we move that project along the crossplex as an idea for the scope of something to do and be presented during community engagement as an idea, not necessarily something that is going to be doing that size, but an idea of something around that as a community multi-purpose complex of that nature.
So we're asking that the
Caper and
city
GCRA work
commission,
together.
city commission recommend that they direct Caper to include the crossplex complex that was presented as an idea for the Waldo and 8th project area. Is that correct?
Well, I guess we would be presenting it because it would have to go to the city commission.
Well, we're recommending to the city
Yes.
commission as a recommending body that they direct Caper to include the crossplex
As an idea.
complex as an idea to be considered in the
Correct.
8th and Waldo.
Yes.
Okay, that's what the second was about?
I heard during the community engagement, when they're doing the community outreach program.
Correct.
Like within that presentation.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
The second, yeah.
Sorry. Clarification on the status of the community outreach.
Turn on your mic, please.
Yeah, could you clarify the status of the community outreach? I don't know if that's already been started. We approved the funds for the community outreach back in October.
Yeah, they have an internal work group and some other things.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have an internal work group. We are, you provided a funding of $4,000 for the community cultivators. We're engaged in trying to put that piece of the project together. We are kind of waiting for a little bit more information back on the status of the environmental, because one thing we don't want to, when we go out to the community, we want to make sure we understand what's feasible. So we don't tell folks, we want to have the whole picture, basically. And we don't want to raise expectations. So we want to have all the information. But we're moving forward on that, and I understand the motion.
So I might need to amend my motion based on that. So still that motion, but maybe it would be more important if Caper could bring back critical updates for us on the board that would probably be more prescient, engaged in the process. So if they could bring us back critical updates, and I still want to keep that part of the motion, but add to it, bring us back critical updates regarding the movement of that project.
So the project is 8th and Waldo.
Other than just saying we're working on it, other than just saying we're working on it. Critical updates, like where we are in the process, what we're doing. Does that make sense, everybody, or am I confusing?
I'm confused. So
Okay, I'll go back
what
to
I
the-
heard is a motion
I don't want to make a
previously.
23-part motion, so I'll do.
Why don't you withdraw your original
I
motion?
withdraw the motion and I'll restate the motion.
Okay. Can we get, I've got a handful of lights flashing. Can I, you're just one of them.
Yeah,
I
I'll
will
just
come
go
back
last.
and get
How's
you.
that?
Pardon?
I'll just let it for everybody else go.
Let me get the
And
rest
I'm
of the
gonna be
lights.
smart,
Don't
okay.
forget what you wanted to
Nope.
say, so. All right. Member Nelson.
Mr. Chair, I was just stating my confusion also. I'm not sure what the previous motion was articulating. I would say this. Anything Waldo is an extremely important, obviously extremely important, and we have some ideas that have been presented. But I think there's a potential for a lot of good ideas that will be presented. And at this time, I would not want to give a nod to any particular idea as being perceived as being ahead of the list, if you get my point. I'm really open to ideas that the city staff, the people of Gainesville can bring forth that hopefully we can distill out of that some sign of long-range benefit to the entire community. And I have to be honest with you right now, I'm far from there yet on where we need to go. And I'm anxious to keep pursuing it. Thank you.
Member Dixon.
I'm kind of feeling a little bit the way Member Nielsen is feeling. But my question is for staff, because I was curious about what point in the process, I guess, Mr. Ratfield, this is for you, what point in the process you'll be doing market feasibility? Because I'm thinking whether it's the sports complex, or I've heard people talk about, event venues and concert halls, and I had my harebrained idea of an ice skate rink, and somebody's got to do the market analysis to figure out if those things will even fly in this community and be financially feasible. So where is that in the process?
I think that's gonna happen probably concurrently with some of the, when we pull the trigger on some of the citizen and community engagement with our neighbors, basically. And actually, again, we have Colliers that we're working with, and if you look at that February 4th memo that you all have, you'll actually see a small snippet in there from them in terms of, a quick, basically very cursory analysis, but we'll have to do obviously some more in-depth work there. So I think it'll be concurrent with the engagement, and what are we now in March? I mean, likely as we go through the rest of the spring and the summer, I think that we would try to hone down on that a little bit.
So I'm going to try and wrap this together. I'm hearing that we're asking you to come back and give us more regular updates. Mm-hmm. We are asking you to hear some of the ideas that this group has put forth, Crossplex being one of them, and incorporate those in with the other ideas that you have heard come out of this group also, and that you are likely to discover through your community engagement. And we just want to make sure all of those ideas are listed and talked about, discussed openly, and then brought back to this board. And I know you're coming back regularly, so we'll have an opportunity to hear back what you found. Does that sound?
I understand.
I'm looking at the board. Is that satisfactory as a commitment to bring back to this?
I guess I need some clarity on what that looks like for me still, because I'm not confused. I'm hearing. I just have some ideas. Some of that language gives me pause.
Okay.
Just some of that. Traditionally, historically, some of that gives me pause, because we made that last year and then we never heard anything. It just kind of went dark. And this is going on 3 years. But I'll come back to having something more of a cleaner motion. But I guess if we more narrowly define what that looks like,
Again, so
you
what I
asking-
heard again was, Capers will be back monthly at each one of our meetings to give us updates, which will include an update on the Waldo and 8th Avenue project. They've agreed to update us in that point on their progress, and they've agreed to include the ideas that we've had in addition to other ideas they'll discover from the community. I'm not sure we need a motion to have them come back and present to us.
I guess like what Member Fox was saying earlier, the reason why I wanted to push that, because since January, we had that discussion, and if not included, I wanted to be considered as part of options to be presented in the fray of community engagement. Because what I'm seeing in your memo also is just what needs to stay, what needs to go, and to me, that's what's giving me, like, well, is it going to be innovative? Or is it going to be, we'll just leave that there and then we'll just put some paint up and call it a day. Eric, that's what's giving me pause. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think you have to see that as a compendium of the input that we got for that memo. I don't think that's limiting the universe of ideas that we're likely to get as we go through this process. I mean, it's going to be a continuum. There are going to be people that probably want to do something really grand, which is great. I think there are going to be other people that in planning jargon are going to be concerned about impacts to the area, neighborhood impacts. And I think we have to take in all of that information, and then we can distill it. People will deliberate on it. You know how it's an iterative process. It's going to be back and forth.
I'll tell you what it is for me. The visuals. When we have the visuals of the drawing, it's like I always give the comparison of projects that we're doing in perpetuity. When this community wants to move on something, and Depot Park, even though it took 20 years, is a prime example of that. We will move heaven and earth to get it done, and it's a viable, beautiful project. Yes, it is. What I'm saying is there seems to be a lack of innovation and a lack of forward thinking and giving our best when it comes to projects, because the visual that we saw from the architect of the drawing was a facade here, some paint up, some nice bricks, and nothing else. I'm hearing you. I'm just telling you where I'm going with this. And so I guess I'll be a little trusted. Yes, I'll just say yes. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
You'll have an opportunity next month at our
Sure.
meeting.
I'll work with Eric and talk to Eric.
And you should put everything else
Yeah,
forward.
I'll work.
Give him some expectations that would help you when he
Try
comes
to
back.
build collegial.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think we need comprehensive communication.
Yeah, I don't think we're good. I'm good. I'll work with it.
All right. Any more discussion on that item? We don't need a motion or anything. All right. The next item is our annual report, 2020 annual report, which I think is the flyer we have.
Yeah, that's a nice slide too.
Who is presenting that?
I am.
Tricia? Hi, Tricia.
Yep. Good evening.
Good evening.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tricia Lopez, GCRA staff. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in your backup, you'll find a copy of the GCRA's 2020 annual report. This is not to be confused with the advisory board annual report that you approved last month. This is our first annual report as a GCRA. So when we were transitioning to a city department, we had met with legal to discuss what our reporting requirements would be moving forward. And as there are TIF funds remaining in the former CRA's trust funds, we will continue to report on those funds until they're spent. So this year we decided to keep things simple. The report was designed in-house as a mailer for easy distribution. And we have a picture of the inside of the mailer. This is just the summary of the activities of the fiscal year. Naisha is scrolling through nicely. And then we go to the local impact section. So each year we analyze our spending in an effort to be more strategic and impacting the local economy. The FY20 numbers look a bit different for a few different reasons. The first is that we worked closely with the procurement department this year and the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and we only included vendors that are registered through the city as small, local, and diverse. In previous years, we've actually gone line by line through the data and called companies, and we have included companies that met the criteria, but they weren't necessarily registered with the city. We also adopted the city's definitions for these categories, which varied slightly from ours. And that's all. So if we look at the half donut on the bottom, we don't just look at the vendors that we're using, but we also look at how we're spending money. And we always make an effort to minimize costs like advertising, office equipment. But this year we did add a new category, which is economic development and COVID-19 relief grants. That was money that was paid directly to local businesses. And if you add the construction and related services and professional services, you'll see that we spent just over 60.5% of our funding went towards designing and building projects. So that number is actually a little bit lower than previous years, but it was just because of the nature of the work, because this was a transitional year and it was a lot more administrative work versus large capital projects. And we can scroll down to the financials, and those include the trust funds of the four former community redevelopment areas. And then the fifth column is the new GCRA fund. So the report is available on our website. That's at the bottom. It's GainesvilleCRA.com. And to meet reporting requirements, we'll also be mailing it to the taxing authorities before the March 31st deadline. And this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Well, thank you. Any questions or comments from our board? It's a nice, concise mailer, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't think you need any approval on this.
Oh, this is informational only.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to the next item, My Neighborhood Grant Program. Yes, sir?
I have my light on.
Oh, I didn't see it. It just now come on?
It's like, yeah.
All right, we got a question. Sorry.
Hi, Tricia. Thanks for the presentation. I was just curious, like the under the diverse, the minority vendors, is that inclusive of women vendors or is that exclusive?
So in this report, the diverse is actually in 3 categories. One of them is women-owned businesses, one is diverse, and one is service-disabled veteran.
You mean minority?
Yeah, minority, yes, minority is diverse.
Okay, it's under that column, yes. But I'm wondering, are women included? Is that exclusive of women, or is that included? Because I'm perceiving maybe there's some overlap. That's all.
Is Daniel Blumberg still here?
I am still here. Give me just one moment to go back and look that data up, and I'll get back to you in just a moment.
Okay, I know that we had this conversation when we were putting it together, and I don't remember where we had landed. I believe that there could be some overlap if a vendor is within 2 different categories, then they would be counted.
Right. Okay, yeah, I would be interested in that. I digress. Thank you.
Okay, we'll let you know.
Are you okay waiting until the end of the meeting while they look that up, or do you want to wait? We can proceed. All right. Okay, we'll now move on to My Neighborhood Grant Program. Thank you, Chelsea.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me pull it up on the screen. All right. I want to thank you guys in advance for your time. For the record, my name is Chelsea Bakaitis, and I am a project manager with the GCRA. Today, I am presenting for a second time the Welcome Back program, now known as the My Neighborhood Grant Program, to you, the GCRA Advisory Board members. Today, I will discuss, one, the public process we have taken so far in advisory board and city commission meetings to move this program forward. Two, the city commission's vision of the program. Three, I'll move on and talk about program guidelines. Four, I'll reiterate how the program ties in with existing city planning documents. And then last but not least, after the presentation and your thoughtful advisory board discussion, the GCRA director will recommend to the advisory board to approve the My Neighborhood Grant Program as presented once approval by the city attorney as to form and legality. So I'm going to start right now by describing to you how the idea of this project came to be. First, Commissioner Ward presented the idea during the City Commission discussion in August on equitable development. This was during the moratorium discussion. There was discussion and many motions made on programs to move forward equitable development in Gainesville's core. As a result, the City Commission motioned for staff to return with details and the possible funding source for the Welcome Back, or now known as the My Neighborhood Grant Program. After this meeting, staff presented the program to the advisory board on December 15th. After this meeting, we shared your feedback to the City Commission on January 21st. So today I am presenting to the advisory board members the most recent direction about the program that we received from the City Commission. In directing staff to create this program, the City Commission desires the city and GCRA to invest in neighborhoods by acting as a financial partner with individuals who want to move back into an eligible neighborhood where they grew up, or encourage long-term home ownership of existing residents in eligible neighborhoods. The vision of the City Commission in implementing this program is to increase neighborhood stability and grow individual and family wealth in Gainesville's Black communities, and increase access to attainable housing. Again, I first presented the program to you, the advisory board, on December 15th last year. Mr. Chair, feedback about the program from this board were received and provided to the City Commission a month later on January 21st, 2021. At this meeting, the City Commission reiterated and clarified their vision and desire for the program to GCRA staff. I am presenting this today to you. I'll be presenting the final program draft policies, and the application is provided as backup to this agenda item if you have any questions. Next, I will present to you the program guidelines that are provided in the backup. First, let's discuss again the purpose of the program. Neighborhoods with intergenerational and long-term residents have a tendency to avoid rapid demographic and community change that unfortunately may happen as a result of rapid redevelopment. By offering a grant to current or former residents, neighborhood stability can be created by helping people invest in their future through home ownership in their neighborhoods. The program will offer $25,000 to recipients to purchase a home or vacant lot for construction. Upon award, the money will be given at closing on closing of the lot or property on behalf of the recipient directly to the seller or bank. The City Commission asks that all historic Black communities of the GCRA be eligible and targeted for the program. These neighborhoods include Cedar Grove 2, Duval Neighborhood, Fifth Avenue, North Lincoln Heights, Pleasant Street, Porters, Spring Hill, and Sugar Hill. Eligible recipients must be a former or current resident of one of these neighborhoods for at least 3 years, and they must agree to live in the purchased or constructed home for at least 10 years, or they'll have to pay back the grant from this program with a 10% interest. If they live in the house between 5 to 9 years, they'll have to pay back half of the loan with 10% interest. For 2021, we have $75,000 allocated, but we plan to increase this dollar amount for the next fiscal year 2022 to allow for more grants and a more robust program. As we discussed during prioritization, budget will be presented at a future advisory board meeting to discuss more details. Finally, I apologize, my dog is chewing on a bone and I just received a message that you can hear it. One moment, please. All right, thank you. I do not want that to be a distraction to you all. All right, to end this presentation, I will reiterate how the program is supported by the GCRA and city planning documents. To begin, this program supports the GCRA 10-year reinvestment plan by providing a very direct community benefit. The plan requires that all implemented housing programs maintain the culture and population of neighborhoods. This project's vision is directly in line with this objective. The program also supports the city's strategic action agenda and the new Gainesville Affordable Housing Action Plan by 1, providing a grant for the purchase of vacant infill lots, 2, combating displacement caused by gentrification, and finally, by increasing affordable housing opportunities for neighbors. I will now move on to the GCRA recommendation. In closing, the GCRA director recommends to the GCRA advisory board to approve the My Neighborhood Grant Program as presented, once approved by the city attorney as to form and legality. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and advisory board members. I thank you in advance for your time and discussion regarding this GCRA initiative. I will now refer to Chair Pollitt to open the agenda item to advisory board member discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Atkins-Tuck, please.
Thank you for the presentation. Does this grant, so this doesn't apply to accessory dwellings on property? It's just new builds and purchase of new property? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, cool. Has there been, so this hasn't been launched yet, I'm just curious about $25,000 doesn't, I'm not clear of like the effectiveness of that in terms of addressing this issue. Has there been any research around that?
No, so the $25,000 was a recommendation from the city commission. Mm-hmm. It's designed to act as an incentive to incentivize people to move towards the neighborhood. I think perhaps that could be something up for discussion in the future, the specific amount.
Has there been any, is there any precedent for a program like this? I'm not clear on if something like this has happened before and been successful.
This is similar to the model block program. Perhaps someone else from the GCRA team who's had experience with the model block can talk to the success of it.
Good evening. Sorry, you caught me taking a bite.
I'm sorry.
No problem. So the model block program was actually really, really successful, but it was different in that the incentive just came with the house, and we actually built the homes. We were the developer on those homes, and they're located in Pleasant Street and Fifth Avenue. And the model block program really was intended to create long-term home ownership and more of neighborhood stability. So the 25 grand came off at closing, and as long as the new homeowner lived there for 10 years, they did not pay it back. And I think halfway through, they would pay half back. So I guess the difference is there were no requirements for the buyers to meet. Like I said, the incentive ran with the house. And as Chelsea stated, I think the commissioner really wanted this to be an incentive for people who grew up in these neighborhoods to move back. So it's just kind of a different strategy, if you will. However, the incentive is much the same, and it's implemented in the same way as it was with the model block program. Does that clarify?
Yeah, that is very clarifying. In your, it's just kind of a opinion based upon your expertise. Do you feel like this would be an effective program with this monetary amount, considering current property values, especially in some of these areas?
Was that towards me? I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Bedelia.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know the number of people who are looking, for incentives to move back to their own neighborhood or the neighborhood they grew up in. But I do know that 25 grand off of the price of a home right now is probably a really good thing. So, it's hard to say. I feel like because the incentive is substantial, that I would think people would pursue this. I don't know the number of people that can prove that they lived, for the minimum amount of years that are required, which I think is only 3. But, time will tell. And I think, we've appropriated some money towards this in last year's budget process. However, with all of these new programs, it remains to be seen. And I think what we'll end up doing is seeing how popular it is and reporting back, potentially on an annual basis. And then that will help direct us whether or not, the program needs more money, less money, or perhaps needs to be sunset. So,
connect with lenders or something of the sort. Yeah, cool, awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is a great program. I'm just excited to see it be successful.
You're welcome.
Member Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Chelsea, for that presentation. I like the direction of thinking that this is going in. I just wanted to be clear on where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from to fund this, the 75,000? And I have follow-up questions, but I will start with that one.
Yes, that's a good question. So the money is coming from so we have a fund titled Model Block Attainable Housing Fund. And so that money is also being dipped into by the 2 infill projects we're doing in Porters and Pleasant Street. And it's also being dipped in by the Ayers property and the recent partnership we did with Public Works in the Duval neighborhood to do streetscape improvements. And so that's why it's only 75,000 this year. But for next year, we'll still be dipping into the same fund, but we will be increasing the amount.
And that leads to my follow-up question. What is the goal amount you want to raise for next year?
I don't have the amount in front of me. I don't remember. I don't know if Daniel, if we can speak to that before we present the budget next week, if you have that amount.
So good afternoon. That is one of the pieces that we were going to be bringing back on the April 7th presentation, would be the FY22 and FY23 proposals for those projects.
Okay, noted. Thank you. So I wanted to ask about in terms of eligibility, are we making sure that we're people that, like want to get second properties, rent out properties, are we trying to exclude people that are doing second, maybe investment type properties? Or are we making sure that we're protecting people that just are like, this is their primary residence and looking out for that and not trying to maybe exploit a program like this?
Yeah, so we'll be taking a lien out on the property for 10 years, and so they will have to follow the guidelines. It will be one of those things where we will have to hear about it, we probably won't be checking up on them, but if they do break the contract, they will have to sign a contract saying that they will actually homestead the property, and they'll have to show proof of homestead to get the reimbursement. And so if we do hear that they are not homesteading or they're not living in the property, then we can make them liable to pay back a portion or the full grant amount.
Copy that. And I think this will be my last question or concern. I think it's a little bit of a mixture of both. And I think Sarah spoke to this, and it's the difficulty of targeting people that have left the community to get them back. How do you target people? Like, you'd probably have to go through maybe tax rolls, residents, and interview people that are currently living in their maybe their kids that may have left or something like that. But it seems very, very hard to do that. I would recommend maybe looking at maybe expanding it in a kind of way to maybe future home buyers, people that live in the neighborhood now that have potential and they have good paying jobs and show promise of being able to sustainably live in something in the neighborhood and do it some good, you know. And that I end with that. Thank you.
Member Dixon.
I have, I guess, similar questions, sort of thinking ahead to how this gets implemented. So I had one question was sort of what's your timing to implement? The next question was for the neighborhoods, do you have to be in that same neighborhood, or could you say grew up in Porters and now you want to buy in Duval? Can you cross neighborhoods, or is it the same neighborhood? And then I wanted to hear more along the lines you were just being asked about how you're going to promote it. Is it something, I guess you would promote, I would think, the neighborhoods and maybe the Realtors Association, and you're right, trying to just find the people who've lived there, some historical records, or I don't know. What have you thought about the marketing part?
Right, so I'll start with the first question. You asked, what is the timing to implement? We will bring it to the City Commission April 1st, and if they approve it, then we will begin implementation immediately. The program starts advertising immediately. And your question about if people can, if they have to stay within their neighborhoods, yes, they do have to stay. If they're from the Duval neighborhood, they can't go purchase a home in Pleasant Street, for instance. They have to purchase a home in the neighborhood where they are from. And you're asked as to how we promote. We are definitely open to suggestions, but so far we're planning on promoting by posting on our website, using social media, sending mailers out to current residents in those neighborhoods. So probably if someone owns property in that neighborhood, or hopefully we can get renters' address. I'm going to try to do that, get the addresses of people who are currently renters in those addresses. They can do that because then they can also inform their family members. We'd also like to reach out to local churches. I'm sure there are maybe people who still go to church in that neighborhood if they don't still live in that neighborhood. And probably use the city communication lines. I don't, and if there's any other suggestions, we definitely are open to that.
Good? Okay, Member Palmer.
One thing I'd like to at least bring up, or I guess ask about with this is, what is, for the approval process for this, does the person have to already have a home selected in that neighborhood before they apply and then approve? Or are they able to apply for this and then say they are now going to be looking for property in these neighborhoods? The reason I bring this up is that a couple of these neighborhoods, especially Porters and Pleasant Street, are very, very desirable neighborhoods. And if there's going to be any delay in trying to, any delay for that buyer to be able to buy that property, especially in our market right now, they're not going to be able to be a competitive buyer if they're having to wait on this approval to be able to pay an extra $25,000. Right now there's a lot of people that are willing to pay cash for those type of properties in these areas and do have the cash, and so a seller may not be willing to wait to try and sell if somebody's got to apply and get for $25,000 that they may or may not get approved for, if that's going to take some time frame. So I guess my question would be, are they able to get pre-approved for this $25,000 before they start the property search? And if they can, is there any recommendation or anything around that?
Yes, so that's exactly what was our line of thinking too. They can get pre-approved for the program before they have a home or a vacant lot picked out. What was I gonna say? I don't know what else I was gonna add to that, but yes, they can get pre-approved for the application. Oh, that's what I was, so since we have limited funding this fiscal year, and we may be limited next fiscal year, depending how many people apply, the grant will eventually be given first come, first serve. So if they're pre-approved, but we have no funding left, then we won't be able to give them the grant, unfortunately. But they can get pre-approved before they choose a house.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if it's up to me yet or ready to make a motion, but I'd be willing to make a motion to.
I've got one more light.
Okay.
Let me come back to you.
Okay.
Member Blount?
Thank you. I could perceive I could anticipate some interesting issues trying to identify who's lived there 3 years. You might end up with people having to bring copies of their parents' tax returns for years during their childhood and showing them as dependents, or immunization or school records showing that address if it was a childhood home. I would also hate to see, say, several people qualify and pick up adjacent properties in one of these neighborhoods and decide, well, hey, let's just put our properties together, and the penalty for selling early is just the cost of business. We can put these lots together and put up something big and get rich. As far as people being able to show that they're getting this, that they probably should get something like a letter of credit that they could show to their lender so that they're ready to immediately bid on property and not lose out because they're waiting for something to show. So they need a letter of credit that they can take to their lender and put that package together as they search for houses and try to make offers. So three things there.
Okay. Did you need an answer, or did you just give that information?
If they have a response on those ideas, I'd like to hear it.
Okay.
I can, if you'd like me to speak to that. So the first one on, you thought it would be interesting to see how people can show their qualification. I agree that this was one of the points with why it took a little bit of time to develop the program, trying to figure out how can people prove that they've lived in the neighborhood for 3 years, especially if they lived when they were a child. So at this point, we have a list in the application of things we can accept, and that list isn't limited. People, if they have other means to prove their eligibility, that is fine. What we're going to require is that they have 3 different forms of proof, and it can range from library card to what you said, immunization records, or we're also open to an affidavit from a neighbor or family member who could write and attest that that person lived in that neighborhood for 3 years. As to your question about people putting lots together and then paying the penalty, our hope was that on top of having to pay the grant back, they have to pay 10% for every year that they didn't live in the house. So 10% does add up over if, so like if they live at 5 years, 10%, I mean, it kind of adds up. So we're hoping that penalty, it's a pretty steep penalty. So we're hoping that might be enough to deter people from doing what you say. And I think that's a great idea, providing a letter of credit to show lenders. That's definitely something we'll take into consideration. And I think perhaps offer to recipients, say, hey, would you like us to put together a letter of credit to show your lender for when you're applying? The only problem is if the funding is expended before they choose a house and we have no other funding, that letter can't apply anymore, just depending on timing. Yeah.
Okay, just as a clarification, for a motion, I'm going to hand it back to Member Palmer in a minute. You're not asking for any dollar amount. You're just asking to approve the program and recommend it to the city commission. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Member Palmer?
Yeah, I think there are kind of a number of questions that we
probably a number of questions that we'll figure out as we go through this program, but at least to me, I think it's really exciting to see this, and I think we should give it a whirl and just kind of see what happens. So my motion would be to approve the recommendation as written.
I second. And we have a second. Member Mitchell. All right. Any discussion? I don't have any hands up. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Remember, raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is public comment. I don't see any hands raised. I'm looking to Tricia to let me know if there's any public comment.
We don't have any over here.
Okay, excellent. Any member comment? No? All right. Our next meeting date is April 7th. It's the Joint City Commission GCRA member meeting. We are virtual, so you'll need to find a place to dial in. Okay? And then, without objection, we're adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.